Do you know why he won't admit this, even though everybody knows it to be true at this point? It's already been publicly reported. You want to know why? And it's going to come out later today, too. Because if you find out that there may have been people working with the FBI, now don't assume they're all, I'm telling you there were federal agents in the crowd. That's a fact. Everybody got it? So I don't want my words to be misconstrued. There were definitely federal agents in the crowd, and probably a lot of them. That's not so much, I think, what they're hiding, okay? There are always counter surveillance people and stuff in crowds everywhere. That's not even news. Inauguration day, there's going to be feds all over the place in the crowd. They're sitting there working counter surveillance, looking for stuff. I get it. That's not the scandal here, folks. This is what I think a lot of the reporters are missing. What I want to know is were there FBI assets in the crowd? In other words, people pretending to be, say, the Proud Boys or something else, working for the FBI, who were there specifically to gin up and agitate and provoke violence. That's the question I want answered. And then with federal agents nearby watching the whole thing. That's what I want to know. And that's the question I know some people, Julie's asking and Darren, but a lot of others are missing.
Well, Dan had that question a few days ago or possibly a week ago. I'm not sure where that cut came from. But his answer or the question has now been answered. Of course they had FBI at the event. You're supposed to. But were they actually working the event in terms of facilitating this so-called you-know-what? You realize today, even today, I still feel weird whether or not they're going to flip a switch because I'm talking about the so-called insurruption. Yeah, I had to change the words there. And it's funny because even Vivek Ramaswamy posted this today. He goes, if you uttered the facts in this IG report last year, you were labeled a conspiracy theorist, a nut. It's also notable that the IG report came out literally the day after Christopher Wray resigned. Yes, if you merely mentioned that you were suspect about the whole insurrectionist stuff, you're a conspiracy theorist, we're going to have to demonetize your video or maybe even like take it down. Don't even think that way. And now today, the actual truth comes out. The actual truth 4 years later, the day after the FBI director resigns. I've said it so many times. There are no friggin' coincidences. There are no friggin' coincidences in this government. All we have, especially when it goes into government, is information you don't know about, or I don't know about. I think we're going to find a huge coincidency with this stuff that's happening with the drones in New Jersey. But one thing at a time. Today, a huge Jenga block got pulled out of the government. There's a reason why Christopher Wray had to tuck tail and run. He knew this IG report, IG Inspector General, he knew this IG report was coming out today. He knew there's no way he could stay in office in January because not only would he probably get fired, but before he got fired, he might get fitted for bracelets. I'm actively digging right now for the testimony he gave to Congress. And it's likely at this point we are going to find that Christopher Wray committed perjury. He may have danced, I can't remember his exact words. He may have said, oh, well, it's under investigation. I can't discuss an active investigation. We'll see what the exact words that he said when he was testifying. But I'm pretty sure it's damning because there would have been no reason for him to tuck tail and run yesterday. I'm done. I'm out. See y'all later. And then today, boom, it drops.
A piece of news to kick off the show today, Sandra. I'm John Roberts in Washington. The report reveals that there were a total of 26 confidential human sources in the crowd that day.
David Spunt is live from the Justice Department. He has got the news for us. David. Sandra, 3 of those were authorized and tasked by the FBI to be there on January 6, 2021. We're coming up on 4 years since that day of the Capitol riot. This IG report specifically focuses on the FBI's handling of confidential human sources, or as we know them, FBI informants. For years, the outgoing FBI director, Chris Wray, has been pressed on reports of undercover agents. According to this new report, there were no undercover FBI agents. However, there were 3 confidential human sources tasked by the Bureau to be in the crowd on January 6th to specifically watch what the report states is concerns over domestic terrorism. Out of those 3, Sandra and John, 1 entered the Capitol, 2 others entered a restricted area. The report says the FBI did not encourage or authorize any sources to go into the building or a restricted area. In addition to the...
So if they weren't authorized to go into these restricted areas, why did they? Who are they? Have we got names to these people? This is some fishy stuff.
3 confidential human sources. The FBI told there were 23 that were there on their own. Now, they had worked with the FBI in the past on other cases, but not specifically on the January 6th rally.
All right, I got to stop. Make sure you guys, he's speaking really fast. He doesn't break things down. Okay, so there were 20 others who were there on their own. These 20 other FBI informants decided to show up on January 6th on their own. No one directed them, huh? How about the guy, the pipe bomber guy that nobody can seem to find? Then again, if you can't tell us what drones are going around, maybe you couldn't find this guy. It's insane. So I want to pull this thing up here while we have a moment, and I want to show this to you. All right, the FBI had 26 confidential human sources at the Capitol. Man, those are some tricky words. On January 6th, including 4 who entered the Capitol building and 13 who entered, quote, the restricted area around the Capitol, according to a DOJ Inspector General report. Do you guys wonder how come this came out today? Anybody wonder, since 2020, it took you this long to write this up? You're either the most incompetent agency in the world, or you were covering something up and you had to disclose it before Trump got into office. There's no way you didn't know this, March of 2020. Well, let's continue. We determined that 26 CHS, which is confidential human sources, who were in D.C. on January 6 in connection with the events of January 6, entered the Capitol during the riot. An additional, wait a minute, they entered it during the riot? Well, let me just check for a second. This is an official document from the Department of Justice. I'm going to have to check some things out. Something's wrong here.
Entered a restricted area as well. And what stands...
Let's look at this. 4 entered the Capitol during the riot. Funny. Even the Department of Justice doesn't call it an insurrection. In fact, in their entire report, they don't mention the word insurrection. Interesting. Interesting, isn't it? An additional 13 entered the restricted area around the Capitol, which was a security perimeter established in preparation for the electoral certification. And 9 neither entered a restricted area nor entered the Capitol or otherwise engaged in any illegal activity. None of these informants who entered the Capitol or restricted area have been prosecuted to date. How flipping convenient. So you're telling me you're acknowledging. You're telling me that there are up to 20 people running around in here doing whatever. You don't disclose that. But none of them have been arrested 4 years later. None. How can that be? How can that possibly be? None. The WFO, who did not know that a total of 26 CHSs would be in D.C. for the events of January 6th because only 4 field offices had informed the WFO or FBI headquarters that CHSs under the relevant field office jurisdiction, 5, would be traveling to D.C. on January 6th. All right, so in a convoluted way, what you're saying is people weren't even communicating within the FBI, probably because it was too secret. The Inspector General determined that many of these 26 informants had provided information relevant to the January 6th electoral certification before the event. So they were snitching. They were assets. And then a few also provided information about the riot as it occurred. So you had communications with them. So they just weren't informants, they were wired. They were able to communicate with the FBI. In addition, field offices collected reported relevant information to the January 6th electoral certification who did not travel to D.C. Among the information provided was the following, and it cuts off. And then Representative Clay Higgins said there were well over 200 FBI assets involved on January 6th, including some dressed as Trump supporters that were inside the Capitol and leading people to key locations. In other words, it was a setup. The government set up Trump and Trump supporters, which this isn't breaking news to you. There are many of you who knew this years ago, that it was all a setup. The whole thing was fake. It was a huge entrapment. We knew what Nancy Pelosi had done and how they denied the national. It's all BS. So the only important thing to focus on here at this point is why. And number 2, these people should be released today. Joe Biden should say, every one of these people in jail right now, get them out. You've been had. You've been caught. Let them all out. Wipe everybody, like people like Kim Wargo who already went to jail. You're going to have to write a big flipping check. Trump is going to make sure that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel just go through this unbelievably.
Out in this report, John and Sandra, none of the confidential human sources that entered the U.S. Capitol or a restricted area were prosecuted by the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. Remember, this is an office that is still arresting nearly 4 years later and prosecuting people with this case. Now, in a response to the Inspector General, the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office says the following. The D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office generally has not charged those individuals whose only crime on January 6, 2021 was to enter the restricted grounds surrounding the Capitol, which has resulted in the office declining to charge hundreds of individuals, and we have treated the confidential human sources as consistent with this approach. Outgoing FBI Director Christopher Wray, who announced that he would be stepping down in the next few weeks yesterday, has been pressed on the FBI's role on January 6th. Here's just one clip from last year.
If you are asking whether the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources and or agents, the answer is emphatically
You're saying
not.
no?
No.
You're saying no?
Not
Okay.
violence orchestrated by FBI sources or agents.
Confidential human sources tasked by the FBI are not undercover agents. These are people that belong to groups like, for instance, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and then became paid FBI informants at certain points in time while still being...
You know what else is interesting? Checks notes. Patriot Front disbanded today. You know, the guys who were dressed in khakis and blue shirts with masks on and carry the flag, the Patriot Front, they decided, just like Chris Wray, you know what, today'd be a good day for us to just disband. We're no longer, you know, we're not going to do this anymore. Seriously? I'm telling you right now, there are people digging up every testimony that Christopher Wray ever gave in Congress, looking at every single document, and he knows that. And that's why he exited stage left. He had to.
Members of their groups. And of course, John and Sandra, others are not part of any group and just decided to show up to the Capitol for whatever reason and still work with the FBI on the side and provide information. And we're, of course, waiting for more information from Capitol Hill to see if the White House has anything, the Department of Justice, the FBI, as this report just breaking now with the Inspector General.
Exactly.
That's me holding my breath, waiting for Merrick Garland to issue some kind of report. Because you know it's not coming. These people are all going to go get out of Dodge real quick. And they're probably having right now, it's Wednesday, no, it's Thursday, probably today and tomorrow, right before Christmas, they're going to have a mass shredding party. Delete, 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 delete. You're caught. You're absolutely caught. Still got to answer, Kash Patel, you got to find out why they waited till today to issue this report. Why is it on December 12th of 2024, 4 years later, right before Trump gets in office, like, hey, let's drop this report and run. Let's get out of here. You ruined people's lives. Our government, the American government, ruined people's lives just to stay in power. And you know what this leads to, don't you? I'm pretty sure you're thinking this. If you're willing to orchestrate all of this, could an election have been that much different? You obviously felt you had to do something to keep the Democrats, in power. And you were willing to destroy people's lives to come up with some sort of insanity of an insurrection. And you use the media. The media, these people are just too much. I mean, I want to show you something. This is how they're covering it. FBI didn't deploy undercover agents, watchdog report finds. No evidence undercover FBI agents joined Capitol riots. I mean, I can't even show you all of them because it's too big on the screen here. Let me see if my other screen can show it, because it's a big picture. No, but you get the point. Probe finds no evidence. They're all jumping in right now and saying, oh, there's no evidence the FBI did anything. But did you just not read this stuff yourself? No, that's specifically why nobody trusts the media. And in case they're wondering, here, let me see if I think I can save it. And if I save it here, I can bring it up. That is specifically why nobody trusts you. You are complete BS, and you'll do anything to cover for the government, daddy government. Hold on here. Let me do this. Where'd that go? Okay, here. Let's take a look at this so you guys can see. All right, you ready? Within minutes, they all came out and said the exact same thing. They got the memo. Probe finds no evidence feds were involved in inciting January 6th. FBI did not send undercover operatives to join January 6th. FBI didn't deploy undercover agents on January 6th. No evidence, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now they got to cover their own butts. Now they're out there doing anything they can because they got to cover their own butts at this point. And it's only going to get worse. Okay, hold on. Let me get back to that video so we can hear an attorney talk about this thing right now, because this is going to get crazy. Ready?
Just waiting for more information from Capitol Hill to see if the White House has anything, the Department of Justice, the FBI, as this report just breaking now with the Inspector General.
What exactly were they doing? And in fact, some of them, as we learned from this report, entered the restricted area, went into the Capitol. Were they inciting anything? Were they enticing anyone to go with them? I really would love to know what exactly they were saying to the people in the groups that they were part of. I also think it's interesting that this report comes out the day after Chris Wray resigns. It seems to me that he may not have wanted to contend with the questions that, of course, are going to emerge from everything that we're learning today. And the other point I'd like to make is something that David Spunch just raised, where he said that Matthew Graves, who's the U.S. attorney here in Washington, D.C., did not prosecute any of those confidential human sources, spies, that did enter the Capitol that day. And his office, Graves' office, did put out a statement and said that they did not generally prosecute anyone who just went into the Capitol and didn't commit other crimes. My question there is, what does generally mean? How did they make those decisions? And why weren't those particular paid spies part of that group?
You saw my interview with Kimberly Wargo. She didn't do anything else. So they lied there. Oh, we didn't charge anybody who just entered the Capitol and walked around. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you most assuredly did. She walked around, didn't break anything, just walked around with her and her son, actually helped pick up stuff, but she got busted and put in jail, and is still on probation. So they're lying. And Libs of TikTok posted this. IG report, the FBI deployed confidential sources to be in the crowd on January 6th. But this is how the media is covering it, which I just showed you. They're purposely misleading readers with word games and lying by omission. The FBI sent informants into the crowd. Therefore, the FBI had a presence there. 100% true. They are completely lying. And the more you see this stuff and you start to understand, the media is nothing more than an extension of the Democrat apparatus. Here's an old article. It says here, ABC News, there's no evidence that feds were involved in inciting the January 6th attack. And they couldn't wait to get this put out. This came out at 1 o'clock. Probe finds no evidence feds were involved in inciting January 6th attack. The findings undercut baseless claims that the FBI played a significant role. You really have to be stupid to swallow the pablum that the media is putting out there. They wondered, I showed you yesterday, where Leslie Stahl and Peggy Noonan were talking about how people don't listen to the media anymore. You wonder why. You have no one to blame but yourselves. You've made your beds and crawled around with snakes and pulled the blankets over your head, and now you get to lie in it. Literally. Nobody trusts you. You will no longer be relevant. And like I've said, here it is, December 12th. We're past a month past the election, and they're still acting like it's November 3rd and 4th. They continue, they can't extricate themselves from the lies at this point. Can't do it.
The 23 confidential human sources, just reading through this, Carrie, 3 of them entered the Capitol during the riot. An additional 11 entered the restricted area around the Capitol, to your point. Based on what we have learned so far in the details of this report, how would you characterize the findings?
Well, it's very interesting. I think it's especially interesting, given that people who some of them were just, I think, internet sleuths and the like, have been talking about this for years. And it was only, I think, a couple of years ago that a DOJ attorney in court made the admission that some of these people were present that day. But if you remember, anyone who even raised the possibility that there were paid FBI spies part of what happened, who were part of what happened on January 6th, they were deemed crazy, conspiracy theorists, and the like. Now, look, confidential.
Absolutely. This guy. Absolutely. That would have gotten you, before Elon Musk purchased this, that would have gotten you deplatformed. They would have deleted your account. You would have been considered one of those Q guys. I'm taking a chance by even saying that. Oh yeah, they would have said that at that point before he purchased. You had to be very, very careful. If you were openly saying, hey, the feds were involved, zip, zap, boom, you would be gone. It would take like no time. It was the biggest censorship apparatus ever seen by our own government. This is why they hate Elon Musk. This is why they don't have any way shape, or form of putting the genie back in the bottle. Podcast, what I'm doing, Benny, Dom, what's his name? Dan Bongino, PBD. Everybody will be talking about this today. And everybody will be telling their audiences, look what your government did to you, and look what the media had, how their hands were involved in this as well. There is no way the media or the government can extricate themselves from this entire bamboozling that they've done over the American public. And I see this comment here, and it's a very warranted comment. It says, does Ray get off scot-free now? As of today, yeah, he was in on it. Merrick Garland, in on it. They all knew. This is why they're looking for pardons, and everybody needs their ship, their immunity pin. Everybody needs an immunity idol at this point because it's like, oh crap, it's all coming out. What do we do? What do we do? This guy Trump actually frickin' won? Oh. Seriously? You told me there was no chance he was going to win. We'd all be okay. Now, what do we do? When Trump said make it too big to rig, this is why. Now they're caught. They are, boom, bear trap, closed. No way to get out of it. And they're running like rats off a ship. I mean, literally, the Titanic is like this, and this is just the first one. You know there's more stuff that's going to come out. Oh, there's so much more. That's why the shredding party and the delete party is probably happening right now. Man, and so now Kash Patel, put it this way. I've been telling you, now you see why we got to be looking at recess appointments. Do you now see why all this going through the halls of Congress and meeting with these yahoos? Oh yeah, how you doing? Yeah. It's got to be the biggest ruse going on right now. Because there's no way they want these people in office. There's no way they want Kash Patel and Pam Bondi looking into this. They're about to basically be like a proctologist. I mean, they're going to spread butt cheeks wide open. That's what you got in there. And there's so much. There's so much for them to look at. They never thought Trump would win. And because they didn't think Trump would win, they didn't do what they needed to do to clean all this stuff up. And they're scrambling. And the funny part now is we can all see it. See, we didn't look behind the cabinet and see roaches. There's no, everything's fine. You turn the light on and the roaches were still behind the cabinet. But now we've ripped the cabinet off the wall and turned the lights on, and you can see them, everybody scurrying. I'm talking from real estate rehab I did once, but I won't go there. And we're all looking at it. We are watching it unfold. We are watching these people lose their mind, figure out, what do we do? How do I get the immunity idol? Oh, he already found it. He's got his. How do the rest of them get off the island? I don't know. Speaking of islands, never mind. But you see where I'm going. When I say there's so much, there's too much for them to hide at this point. You got this. You got this. You got this. You got Ukraine. You got so much. And you can't cover it up in 30 days. People are seriously in trouble. At this point, I know Trump has said no deals, but you better be making some trips to Mar-a-Lago right now.
Human sources are a law enforcement tool that are used in all kinds of situations, and we know that some of these people were apparently part of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. But again, why so many? What were they doing? What were the conversations they were having? And if they were, in fact, according to the IG and the FBI, not authorized to be there, then why weren't they prosecuted like everybody else who were prosecuted for similar issues?
On that point, you and I were talking about this off camera. So far, as of August, 1,488 people who were there on January the 6th have been charged with some sort of an offense. 894 of those people had pled guilty to various offenses. 288 pled guilty to felonies. 606 pled guilty to misdemeanors. Yet none of these confidential informants were charged with anything.
Right, so you have to wonder what were the conversations that were happening behind the scenes. And something else that came...
Okay, so she just made a good point. What were these conversations that were going on? Who's got the tapes of them? Oh, that's right. The January 6th committee supposedly had all this information. And for a long time now, people have said, yeah, Liz Cheney and some of you guys were back there with the Disney producer creating a new version of Insurrection Moana. You were making a movie. It wasn't true. And you played around with facts and documents. And all that stuff better be there. Because the fact that it's not there isn't going to get you off, because there's more trouble for you.
In this report was that the confidential human sources, apparently the information they were providing to the FBI was no different than what everyone else was providing. Like, hey, January 6th, there might be some violence, there might be a thing. So there wasn't any, apparently it sounds like there wasn't anything special that they were revealing. And, you know, again, the questions are, what were those confidential human sources who were, quote, not encouraged or directed to be there by the FBI? What were they saying to the other people in their groups? Because
back up, honey. Before we ask what they were saying, what were they doing there? Were they Trump supporters? Did they decide on a cold January 6th day in 2020? You know what? I got nothing else to do. Let me just head down to D.C. and go to this party, this little soiree that Trump is throwing. This might be fun. This might be interesting. Who paid for your trip? Who paid for your gas? Where did you stay? Oh, they just happened to show up there. So if they, you know, use a FBI credit card or wire transfer, how'd they get there? And why did they go? Man, there's so many questions.
the reason I keep raising that is because if in fact there were conversations occurring like, hey, let's go in there, let's do that, let's do this. You know, entrapment is a defense. You know, if a government agent induces you to commit a crime, a defendant can raise that in the court of law and say, look, I was trapped into doing something. I was enticed into...
Problem with that, huge problem, is all these defendants would have had to have known that these people were there. And since it just got uncovered today, everybody who pled guilty, who didn't plead guilty but then got thrown in jail anyways, not a single one of them knew this happened. So they didn't even have the opportunity to address these people because nobody told them, oh yeah, by the way, let's go ahead and do some discovery here. Yeah, we had 26, 30, 200 people there. Nope, never told them. Never told them. Every one of those convictions right now are suspect. They got to be thrown out.
Doing something by the government I otherwise wouldn't have done. Now, the government's response based on this report would probably be, well, they weren't authorized by the government to be there at the time. But then, of course, a question for a judge would be, well, could they have been perceived still as an agent of the government, given that they were, you know, this confidential human source? What did the defendant know about them and their role at the time? I just think this report raises more questions, but certainly at a minimum, gives some credibility to people who have been saying this for so many years.
And I assume that we're never going to learn the names or the identities of the confidential informants. So
Well,
that will leave open the question as to who it was. We got.
Yo, bro, preserve your documents and lawyer up. It's all you FBI spokesmen, former guys, everybody associated with the 51 letters that have been signed, the 51, your security clearance is going to be pulled immediately. Preserve your documents and lawyer up. So don't say when stuff gets pulled from you later, hey, I didn't know that. You got warned in the war room over and over again. Preserve your documents and lawyer up.
So breaking. January 6th committee chairman the guy who was in charge of the whole thing, supposedly, Benny Thompson, says he would accept a pardon from Biden if it were offered. So wait a second. The guy who was basically in charge of the entire thing, upon hearing this, let me see what time did Benny post this. Oh yeah. Okay, hold on. Yeah, this was posted at December 12th today at 3:07. So this news comes out, and we're talking about all of this J6 stuff and everything that's come out, and he says, "Yeah, I could take one of those immunity pins, please. I need the immunity idol. I need to figure out how I can save my buttocks." They know what they've done. Now they are caught. They are caged animals. They have no idea how to get out of this. They are completely screwed. Kash Patel and Pam Bondi will be there on January 20th. And if I were Trump, I'd be like, no deals.